Hello and welcome. This is Precious Iriaevho from Clickit Academy, and this is the CSS tutorial. If you're watching this video, then there is a high chance that you just finished my HTML training, and I'm telling you that you are on track. So let's get to it without wasting much time. CSS. CSS is the language we use to style a web page. You see, when you visit a lot of websites and they look colorful, so many colors, properly styled, you understand why CSS is important. If you did the project from my HTML training, then you will see the way your page look. It looks very basic. It doesn't look pretty. It's just ugly. It's just markup. CSS is what is going to make it look so pretty. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on the screen, paper, or in other media. CSS saves a lot of work because it can control the layout of multiple web pages at once. And CSS can be stored in external style sheets. If you don't want to make your current page, your current documents ugly, you can put them in external style sheets. That is CSS for you. Now, you will also be wondering why CSS and why is it different from HTML? You see, HTML was just created to describe the content of your web page. Remember all the paragraph tags we created, the div tags, the lists, the table. Those are basic HTML tags or elements. And CSS is what is going to make them look pretty. You use CSS to format them to make them look wonderful to screens. Okay, right now they look ugly, your project look ugly, but with CSS they are going to look way more pretty. Now, how do we add CSS? When a browser reads a style sheet, it will format the HTML document according to the information in the style sheet. Okay, so there are three ways to insert a style sheet or a style. The first one is external CSS, the second one is internal CSS, and the third one is what? The inline CSS. Though I don't advise that you use inline CSS, but it is important that you understand that you can use all these together. So let's see this. So you understand my basic folder structures already. If you have been following my training, you see I like to keep everything in folders. So I expect that you have a CSS folder anywhere on your computer. Just create it. And in mine, I added an image because I know I will use the image in the future. So let's open this folder in my favorite editor. Mine is Visual Studio Code. I don't know what yours is. Okay. So mine is open already. Good. So we have everything ready. So I have my image here. The first thing I want us to do is let's create a simple HTML document. So I'll call this 001 introduction. So I'm changing the naming system too so that they can be arranged properly. HTML. Okay. Remember, bring in all your HTML documents. So your HTML boilerplate. Mine is here already. To do what I just did in Visual Studio Code, get the exclamation mark, then tab. Now, this is a simple HTML document. I would call this introduction. Introduction. Okay. Now, remember I said that we can add CSS in three ways. The first one is the external CSS. So let's try that. To insert your external CSS, the first thing you need to do is to create an external style sheet. So let's create a new document called style.css. Take note of the extension .css. HTML is .html, CSS is .css. When that is done, go back to your HTML file and just under your title, we are going to introduce you to a new tag. We call this tag the link tag. So the link tag is what you will use to access this style sheet. So first of all, we have to determine the relationship using REL. And the relationship is what? Style sheet And where is this file located? The href, this file name is called style.css. Now let's do some things. Let's put some elements on our page. So I'm going to create an h1 that will just have my name. So precious Iriaevho. So let's go back to our document and open this file in our browser. So CSS, this is my introduction. I'm going to right click, open with, I'm using Maxton browser. So you see, I have this. Let me close all these. These are from our HTML class, so we don't need this anymore. I'll close all this now. I'm really delighted that you followed me all through. I'm so delighted. Yes, so this is from our HTML class. Okay, good. So we are good to go. So introduction. So this is our introduction file. As you can see, it's looking very basic, right? So now what can we do? We can target this element using our style sheet because we've referenced it here. So we can say something like h1. Don't worry if you don't understand what is happening now. Just be calm, okay? Everything will be clear to you very soon. So I'm going to change the color to, so the color, I'll call this yellow. If I go back to the page and reload it, it will change from black to yellow. You can see that, right? Good. That is how you apply your external style sheet. The other way to apply a style sheet is the internal style sheet. And how do you do that? In your head, in the head of your document, you create a style, a opening and closing style tag. So it's a opening and closing style tag, style. Then inside, let's target the same element, h1, and I will call this color, I'll call it red. Let's reload the page. You can see it is red. I'm going to tell you why this is happening, but before we get there, just follow along with me. The third way, according to our document here, is inline, okay? So for inline, what do? You put it on the element itself. So you say style. I don't advise that you do this, but it is important you know that it can be done. Color. And I'm going to call this color maybe blue. Okay? Now let's go back to our website and see. And as you can see, it is now blue. Now you are wondering, why is the color changing when I targeted the same elements? There's what we call specificity, okay? So what it means is, or let's call it cascading order. So cascading order means any style sheet that you put in, any style you have in external can be overwritten by what you have in the internal. And anything you have in internal can be overwritten by what you have in inline. So that is, according to hierarchy, inline is stronger than internal, and internal is stronger than external. So anything you have in external style sheets, you can overwrite it with what you have in the internal style sheet. So don't worry if you don't understand what I've done, you would understand it shortly. Let's proceed. Now, CSS syntax. Remember, I just created a syntax with our h1 where I said the color was blue or whatever. Now, let's understand what it means. The h1 is the selector because h1 is the name of that tag we want to select, okay? So h1 is the selector, then color is the property, and blue is the value. Everything inside of this curly bracket is called declaration. So you can have multiple declarations. All you have to do is separate them by semicolon. Don't worry, we will see all this in action, okay? So just for a recap, this h1 that we have here is what? Is our selector. Everything we have in this curly bracket is our declaration. And this color is the property, and the value of the property is red. CSS selectors. We've already used the selector, But now let's talk about selectors. A CSS selector selects the elements you want to style. There are so many types of CSS selectors, but at the initial stage of this training of ours, we will be working with the simple selectors. And what are the simple selectors? We have selectors that are based on the name of the elements, the ID of the elements, the class, the universal selector, and the grouping. So we've already used name. So name was what we did there when we said H1. Okay, we only use the name to target it. Okay, we use the name only to target it. I'm going to leave this, then I'll create another one called an H2 element. I'll create an H2 element. Okay, then I'll call this I'll just say CSS training. Okay, CSS training. So I'm also going to take out, or I could leave it, or let me copy it and paste so that I can comment that out. Like I told you, I don't like to use internal style. Sorry, inline. Inline is not good because it makes the work ugly. So you can see now, we can see everything properly, H1, H2. And like I said, going forward, we will only be using the internal style sheet. But when we want to create our project, we will learn how to use, you know how to use external already. But because I want to keep everything on one document, we'll be using internal style sheet. So I will delete this at a later time. Now, what are we talking about here? We want to talk about selectors. We've already used this selector called name. So H1 is targeting H1. But another type of selector is what we call class. And I can call this, I can say heading. And another type of selector, so let me duplicate this, is what we call ID. So instead of class, we can have ID, and I can make this an H3. Please, if I'm too fast, you can always rewind back, or you can pause the video and watch again, okay? But you would understand it. So I will call this Clickate Academy, and ID, I will call this maybe Ed or Eddie. So take notes. More than one element can have the same class, but an ID can only be specific to one element. Just to show you that, I will duplicate this H2 twice. So you see they have the same class, CSS training 2. Okay, so let's check this in our browser. So we have 4 elements now. Now let's style them. We've used the name of the element here, H1. Now let's use the class. To use the class to target, you say dot, then the class name, which is heading. Okay, then you open your brackets. So what do we want to do? Let's change the color of all the elements with class heading to what? Let's change them to purple. And the third one is the ID. So for ID, you use hash. So hash Eddie to target it. Open your curly bracket to create a declaration. And let's call the color for these ones to be, let's say, green. So let's go to our page and see what we have. You can see the colors have changed. Let me zoom in. The colors have changed. Okay, and you see these two, they have the same color because they have the same class, but this one has a different class, has a different color because it's using an ID. So let's check what is happening. So what is happening is, so we have Eddie, this color is not so different. I want something different. Let me say yellow. So you can see the difference very well. Aha. So you can see we targeted this one using the ID, we targeted this two using the class, and we targeted this one using the name. So those are 3 ways to target an element. Also, we have the universal selector. So universal selector is called star asterisk. So this is going to affect everything on the page. So if we say asterisk, we can say we want the color of all the elements on the page to be probably, so if I comment out all this and I comment all this out and I use the asterisk, I can make the color of all the elements on the page to be yellow. So this is called the universal selector. You can see everything is now yellow, but you see it is not a nice selector to use. Okay, also if I comment it out and I uncomment these other guys, or I leave those other guys, okay, we can group them. So I can say h1, okay, then also the class heading, comma, then also the id heady. I want them all to be color what? Color pink. And let's see if this works. And you can see they've all been changed to color pink because I grouped them all together. Look at it. I grouped them all together here, separating them by comma. So instead of writing them on one line, if I know that they will have the same style, I can group them together. Okay? So let's proceed. Now, in CSS, you can see I already used it. So to comment, you have to use / asterisk, then your comment, then asterisk and backward slash. So you can see I already used the comment. For an example, this is it. So this is the opening comment tag and the closing comment tag. Anything that you comment will not be used and will not be seen on the browser. Okay? This is the HTML comments. You can see the difference. And this is CSS comments. So this is how to use comments in your document. The next thing we need to talk about are CSS colors. Colors are specified using predefined color names. Like color names, yellow, pink, blue, purple, you know that. Or you use RGB values, X values, HSL values, RGBA values, HSLA values. So they are mostly used for text, backgrounds, and border. The reason why colors are important in CSS is because if you ask yourself what makes a website beautiful, or if you want to say a website is beautiful, what do you say? You say it is colorful. So that is why colors are important. And I like to keep it simple. I like to use color names. So let's see the first link from W3 School. So you can see we have a lot of color names. We have color names and the X value. So we have antique white, aqua. You know what? Let's try it. Let's try it. So let's try this one. I will copy this cadet blue. So I just copied it, cadet blue. And all our value, let's change it from pink to what? Cadet blue. Let's see what we have if it works. So from pink, we now have cadet blue. You see, I only used the name and I copied it just from here. So you can copy all sorts of colors. You can also use the X code. So if I copy this X code and I take it down here, so instead of cadet blue, I can put in the X code. This is called X code. If I go back to the page, or let me copy another X code so that you see the difference. Let me copy this dark golden rod X code. Copied. So I'll delete this and I'll paste it. And let's check it on our browser. You can see the colors have changed, okay? The colors have changed. Also, from our document, you can also go to Rapid Tables and get the RGBA and XSL value. So if I copy this, if I want to, let's choose a color from here, this shade, and let me copy the RGB value. If I copy it and I take it down here and I change this from X to RGBA, let's see what we have on the browser. So you see the color has changed. So now you can understand that you can use your color names, you can use RGB values, and you can use X values. I like to use color names a lot. But if you want more flexibility, okay, you use RGBA because you can select some shades of color that are not common. That is why RGBA values are very nice. So let's proceed. Now, let's talk about CSS backgrounds. In your CSS journey, you're going to use backgrounds a lot, okay? You're going to use backgrounds a lot. And for this, let's create a new document. So I'll copy everything here and I'll create a new document. I'll call this 002 background.html. I'll drop everything. I'll clear everything I have inside of the style. I'll also remove this style. Okay, let me leave it. Though I won't be using the external style sheet, but you can leave it. Everything we'll do will be internal. I'll also remove these comments because we will not be using inline. Okay, then change the title to background. So let's talk about background. The CSS background properties are used to add background effects for elements. Let's see this in action without talking too much. Let's clear, okay, yes, let's leave this 3 heading. So I'm going to leave this 3. So I have the H1 with my name, then H2 with the class heading called CSS training, then H3 with the ID called Clickate Academy. Now, if we visit this in our browser, that is background, 002 background, you can see, you know what? Let me take out this link. No, let me make it wrong. So I don't want, since I'm using internal style sheet, I don't need this, okay? I don't need it. Like I said, I'm going to delete this style. So I'm deleting it now because I don't want you to be confused. Okay, so everything we will do will be internal on the same page. That's what it means. Internal on the same page using style. Now, let's visit our page again and reload. Good. Everything is looking just the way we expect. Blank, pure HTML. CSS background. The first background property we want to look at is the background color. So let's see how it works. For background color, I'm going to use the body tag. So how do I target this body tag? I can use the name. I hope you're learning now. I can use the name, body. So if I want to use body, I will just say body. Because it's a tag, I don't need to put any dot or hash. Body. And background color. And we can make this red. Okay. And if we go to the page and reload, you can see our background is now red. Our background is now red. That is because we targeted the body tag directly. So everything on the page of the website is the body tag. Everything here is body tag. You can change it to any color you want. Let's try 2 more colors. I can do yellow. Sorry, that spelling is incorrect. And if I reload this page, you can see it has become yellow. I can change it to another color. I can change it to green. So you can see color change to green. But that yellow seemed to pop out. So let me change it back to yellow. So I'll just undo back to yellow. Now, we can also use opacity. So what is opacity? Opacity can help us reduce the intensity of the color. So if I say opacity of 0.5, let's reload this page. You can see it has affected the opacity. Let's use a very dark color so you will understand. If I use black for my background, black, and if I comment opacity out, nothing will be visible on this page anymore, right? Correct. But now, opacity can make us make it lighter. How? Let me uncomment it. Opacity 0.5 means that it will not be totally black. And let's see. But because color black will always be color black, so opacity would not be so visible here. But you get the idea, right? With opacity, let's say I have opacity of, so opacity, the highest value of opacity is 1. So let's try 0.1 and see. But because the text is black, you can't see it, but the opacity is working. So let's use a simpler color like green, which is a bit dark. So if we use green with opacity of 0.5, if we reload, you can see the effect. If I comment out the opacity, you would also see the difference. You see? You see the value. So the opacity is working on the text. All right. So that is it on opacity and background color. The next thing we want to talk about is background image. So you see, our website will be taking shape in a very short while. So let's go. To use a background image, all you need to do is just to, so let me comment these guys out so that we can have a clean slate. Okay, so when I mean clean slate, I mean nothing on our page. So now I have an image here already. So if I want to get it, so background image. Okay, that's the property. Then what is the value? To get the value, I will say URL. Then my image is in the same folder, so I will say image.jpg. That's the image name. You can see I'm not doing magic. Image.jpg, that's the name. So any name you give to your image, that's the name you will put here. If I now open this page, let's see. You can see that my image is everywhere on my screen. But I know that you would not want your website to look like this because it actually makes no sense this way. So what do? There are other properties that we can work with. First one is what we call the background repeats. Okay, so let's see background repeats in action. If I use a background repeat, I can determine how I want my images to be repeated. You know, currently the image is repeated everywhere. So I can say repeat X, that is repeat it vertically. Okay, so let's see, repeat X, horizontally. So you can see my image is repeated horizontally. If I change this to repeat Y, you see, my image is repeated vertically. And also, the third one is I can decide that I want my image to be no repeat, which is how you would use it most of the time anyways, no repeat. And what does no repeat does? You see, it just brings in the image alone as a background. So let me put a comment here so that you can know that there are 3 types of repeats. Okay, so we have repeat X, repeat Y. So you see, the video is better than the slide. You can see it already. No repeats. Good. So no repeats. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is background position. Remember, our image is currently the background for the entire body, but it's because the image is small. If it's a big image to cover the whole page, We can also determine the position of our image. And how do we do that? Very, very simple. We use background position to determine where we want to position the where we want to position our image. So let's check this out. So I'm going to use background position now. Background position, and I can say center. So let's see if it's going to come to the center. You can see it's at the center of our image. Oh, sorry, of our body tag of our website. So we just moved it to the center. We can also say right center. That means you can attach different types of directions. So right center. And guess where this one would be? Yeah, you guessed it right. So it's at the right, but it's at the center. Okay. We can also do center center. And let's see how that works. So center center. You can see we still have our center center. So the idea is just for you to know how these tags work. Okay. So now that we've been able to do that, we can also work with our image attachment. So we can attach our image. So we have the fixed and the scroll image. So let's do that quickly. Don't worry, when we create our project, this will make a lot of sense to you. So, but you have to understand the tags, because when we start using them, they should not look foreign to you. So background attachment, we have fixed and we have scroll. So if I use fixed, the image is going to stay on one position for fixed. But if I use scroll, when we scroll the page, our image is going to scroll with the page. That's just the difference. Let me see if I can get this on mobile screen. So I just make the page small, and as you can see, I'm scrolling, but the image is still at the back, like it's not moving. But if we change it to scroll, my image is not big, that's why I have to do that. To scroll, and I reload, you can see the image is moving with it. So for you, use a very big image so that you can see this in action. So when you use a very big image, you will be able to see how this works. Okay, see, the image is moving with the background. That's just the difference between the image scroll and the image attached. That's the difference between the image scroll and the image attached. Now, there is a shorthand to get all this to work. So instead of typing all this value, we can do it with shorthand. So let me comment all this out. Comment this out. And comment this out too. And what's the shorthand value? Shorthand is you just say background. Background. Then the first thing you want to put is maybe the color, in case your image is not showing. So let's say black. So I want color black or green. Sorry, green. If there is no image, then use image URL, and the image is from where? .jpg. Okay, then I don't want the image to repeat, so no repeat. Simple as that. Then if you also want the position, you can also say position, but normally you can leave it this way. So this is the color, this is the image, and this is the repeat. If we go back to our browser and see, you see it still works. So but because the image is not as big, that's why the color is showing. If the image was not big, it was big, the color won't show. So if I take out this color, if I duplicate this, I comment the first one out and I remove color, It's still going to work, but we'll be back to what we have previously. All right. So pretty straightforward. And this is it on background image. To be honest, there's a lot of other properties we may need to touch, but it depends on what you would use frequently when you are designing a web page and what you would not. And if there are some other properties that we need to touch, when we start designing our web pages, you will see them in action. But right now, I don't want to inundate you with too much information. Okay, guys? So, the next thing we'll be talking about is CSS borders. Okay? CSS borders.